This. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the MoneyShift Daily Automotive News Show. I am Thanasi, your host, and today we got a lot of car news, but as we so often do sometimes at the beginning of this stream, we got a good little video that shows off something pretty kick-ass. But as we so often do, I'm going to hit that share button. We got a good little video, and then we will get underway. Hold on just a second. Oh. Well, that was frustrating. You know, don't you hate sometimes when technology just doesn't work how you think it should? You know what I mean? It just doesn't. I don't know whether it doesn't tick the right box or whatever it is. Today is going to be a slightly shorter stream, but we do have a lot of car news to cover. So without further ado, let's just dive right into it. Now, the first thing that you guys are looking at on the screen right here, I should probably actually show you this first, is the new Toyota Land Cruiser. So we saw this, okay? We saw this a while back now, all right? Big shout out to Dylan with the like, my man. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, welcome. So we saw this thing a while back. This thing came out probably the better part of 2 weeks ago now. But what we didn't know was when the GR Sport variant of it was going to be unveiled. Now, as a reminder, the Toyota Land Cruiser, as it stands, is not coming to the United States. We are not receiving this thing. We will likely be getting it in Lexus form as an LX, but we won't be getting the Toyota version that you see here. But the reason why I'm continuing to show you guys this vehicle is because a lot of the things that are going to appear in this Toyota Land Cruiser will show up in other things. We're talking next generation 4Runners. We're talking next generation Tacomas. We're talking Tundras, all that stuff, right? And with the introduction of the GR Sport variant of the Land Cruiser, we got some pretty interesting stuff that we're going to outline and we're going to show a quick video. But high-level summary as to what the Toyota Land Cruiser is. It is all new. It has a more rigid chassis, and it has an introduction of two new motors. The first of which is a 3.5-liter twin-turbo, I almost said EcoBoost. Yikes. 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6. That engine makes 409 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque, and it most certainly will be finding its way into the new Toyota Tundra. The second engine, more interesting to me, is a 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6 diesel that makes 304 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. Now, the GR Sport model, the one that you're seeing here, differentiates itself from the regular Land Cruiser thanks to a specific body kit, 18-inch wheels, new rear bumpers, skid plates, mud guards, loads of GR emblems, and inside it has a two-tone interior with carbon fiber weave trim. But the reason why we're talking about the reason why we're talking about the Land Cruiser today is the suspension. Now, Toyota developed for this car a Toyota electronic kinetic suspension system, all right? And what this does is it does something unlike anything we've seen before. It's not something new, or excuse me, it's something new to the space, and it's something particularly new to Toyota. Shout out to Jack with the like. Thank you, my man, for tuning in. Welcome. And what it does is it's an electronically controlled suspension that automatically and independently adjusts the front and rear stabilizers under certain conditions for each wheel. And what this does is it gives you an increased stability in the city, and it reduces vibration, but it also increases this vehicle's capability off-road. Now, the video that we're going to be watching right now showcases that, and it does a really good job. I mean, hell, it should. It's from Toyota, right? So let's take a listen, or let's take a watch, because it's in Japanese, so we're not going to be listening. But what this shows you right here is the difference in the suspension, right? What it has the ability to do is independently monitor each side and adjust the stability accordingly, thus providing more tire to the ground, right? What it's trying to do is constantly maintain contact with the road under any condition, and you'll see the difference between this Land Cruiser and the previous Gen 1 in a little bit, and it is really, really cool. I adore the new Land Cruiser's looks. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so here is the difference between this EK DSS system being on and the EK DSS system being off. Now, they're showcasing this by just using a current generation Land Cruiser at the top here, this red one, and a previous generation Land Cruiser on the bottom. And the difference is pretty staggering. Check this out. So as they start to incline, you can see the front suspension retains a pretty similar property, right? They're using a similar angle, etc., etc. Nothing new to see here, but what you need to pay attention to is the rear here, because as this front gets to a certain point, this rear is going to want to lift off the ground. Look at how much articulation is in this rear, and look how much faster this newer generation Toyota Land Cruiser went over this than the bottom, because of the confidence that this EKDSS system was able to give the driver, right? Look at how this rear tire is just staying planted. No problem, and they're going right up. Whereas the car that doesn't have the EKDSS system, this tire wants to lift, and because of that, they're not doing it correctly. You know what I mean? Mr. Stark, what is my favorite car? It's a good question, man. Depends on what price bracket. If you give me a price bracket, I can give you a better answer. But I think, like, in terms of cars, it's so hard to pick one. It's like asking your parents to pick a favorite child. You know what I mean? But it depends on the day. I really, really love the Maserati MC12. That car always sticks in my mind. So this is another wild image, okay? So on the left is going to be without the EKDSS system, and on the right is going to be with it. What they're showing is the car under undulation, right? Look at the difference between the stability inside. It is crazy. The left without, the right with. Yes, they're shaking. Yes, they're moving. But the difference is huge. Huge. I mean, look at this. These guys are bouncing around. And sure, maybe they might be adding to it a little bit. You know what I mean? But there is definitely a difference. So this is a really cool system for sure. Shout out to the fine folks at Toyota for crafting something that is pretty amazing. But as we often do, let's hit the beats so that we have some music so you guys aren't just listening to me. You know what I mean?
America's #1
Oh my God. Okay. Mr. Stark, anything, if you could have any car in the world, which one would you pick? Right now, my answer is going to be an Edo competition Maserati MC12 Corsa, which if you guys don't know what that is, when the Maserati MC12 came out, which is their long wheelbase V12, essentially the Maserati Enzo, they made a track-only variant, and the crazy lunatics at Edo competition made it street legal. So that's my answer for you right now. I love that thing with all my soul. Jack says, how much is it going to start at? Now, that is a really good question, Jack. And the interesting thing here is because we don't have this car in the States, it's a harder question to answer. That said, abroad, where this car is going to be, in Japan, it starts at $70,000. So a pretty good deal when it comes to SUVs, but especially for the capability that this provides, but we won't be getting it here. We'll likely be getting it under Lexus guys, and then you'll be looking at something that'll be closer to Cadillac Escalade in terms of price comparison. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that there. Now, the next vehicle that we're going to be talking about today is this Tesla Model S Plaid, but this just isn't any Model S Plaid. This is a modified version from the fine folks at Unplugged Performance. Now, if you guys haven't heard about Unplugged Performance before, you should. They're one of the premier Tesla tuners. Yes, Stark, I am indeed a man of culture. Everybody here on the MoneyShift podcast is people of culture. Jack, hell yeah, I was excited to see you cover this. Yeah, man, for sure. Okay, so what we're looking at right here is the Unplugged Model S. Now, for those of you that don't know who Unplugged is, get familiar. As Tesla reaches, new heights as electric cars take off. Those that got into the game early are going to be rewarded, and Unplugged was the first person to start modifying the Tesla chassis. In fact, if you go to Los Angeles, okay, and you visit the Unplugged base where they're out of, right, they're literally in the Tesla parking lot. Like, they share a similar parking lot with one of the first Tesla factories. Michael says, go Randy, this is the car from Pikes Peak Hill Climb, right? Correct. Exactly right. This is the car that won its class at the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. So what you guys are looking at is a heavily modified Tesla Model S Plaid in a couple specific areas. This car has extensive aero. This car has wider tires, better brakes, stripped interior. What it does not have, okay, is Unplugged's wide body that they have for the Model S. What it does not have is any suspension modification. Okay, this car just has brakes, tires, aero. That's it. And obviously, no additional power, because as we've, seen, it's pretty hard to extract extra power out of electric vehicles, but 1,020 horsepower out of a tri-motor electric car that can do 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds should be more than enough power, right? I don't know if we necessarily need more juice. You know what I'm talking about? And like Michael alluded to, this is the car that won its class at Pikes Peak, and Unplugged is going to continue to go for blood. Randy Popes at the last Tesla Corsa event, which is an all-Tesla track day that Unplugged started, did a 1 minute 28.2 second at Laguna Seca. Now, to put that time in perspective, okay, Randy Popes was behind the wheel. If you guys don't know who Randy Popes is, he is this gentleman in this photo right here. He has an incredible racing career, racing a bunch of different things. He sticks out in my mind for racing K-Pax Volvo S60Rs. It was really, really cool. Stark, I'm a JDM guy too, my man. I love them. I actually just sold a K-Swap Civic that I had. So I'm with you, my dude. But the one thing that's important about Randy Popes is he's driven a lot of cars, and not only has he driven a lot of cars, he's driven a lot of them around Laguna Seca. So while it's tough to really benchmark this car in the sense that it could have been under better weather conditions or something like that, we can, because Randy's driven a lot of these other vehicles. So if we look at that 1 minute 28.2 second time that he was able to set, okay, that is 0.6 slower than a McLaren Senna, but 0.1 faster than a Porsche 911 GT2 RS. So that's where this car's sitting right now. And that's pretty nuts. The GT2 RS is serious. It has what I'd argue similar aero to this, right? Massive wing, massive splitter, massive wheels and tires, etc., etc. And this hasn't even scratched the surface for the Model S Plaid, because we're not even talking about suspension mods here. We're not even talking about a car with their Unplugged Ascension wide body that could probably fit wider wheels and tires should they want. Jack says, after the run up to Pikes Peak, did they say how much battery percentage was left? I understand that Teslas generally don't last long on track before needing a recharge. That is a good question, Jack. And actually, what Unplugged is able to show with these Tesla Corsa events is that what they do is, and if you guys haven't attended a track day, here's oftentimes how it works, right? You're placed in run groups, all right? Let's say there's 20 cars. There's going to be 4 run groups of 5 cars. I know you're never that fortunate, but just to make this example easy, right? Let's say this Tesla Corsa event has 4 run groups with 5 cars in each. Each Tesla has proven the ability to last an entire session, which oftentimes is 15 to 25 minutes, depending, right? And then during its off time, which usually is 40 minutes, they charge. And thanks to the speed of a Tesla supercharger, you can get back to that 80, 90%, and your battery's cooled by the time you're up. So while your battery percentage definitely drops, right? You're going from that 80, 90% to maybe 10, 20 over the course of your session, because charging times are quick enough and they're located in close enough proximity to the track itself, these guys are able to do sessions all day. You know what I'm saying? And the newer Teslas, we're talking about the Model 3 Performance, we're talking about the Plaid, we're talking about newer Model S's, etc., have enhanced cooling that allow them to do longer stints in general, right? Like the Model S Plaid is fine under heavy track use. The Tesla Model 3 Performance has a track mode that monitors the battery temperatures more carefully. But if you pay attention to these Tesla Corsa events, all generations of Teslas are doing it, and they do just fine. Some may have to run less, some can run longer, but overall, any generation of Tesla Model S, X, 3, Y, whatever, has proven to do okay in these events. And thanks to the increased speeds of charging time, they're able to do full days no problem. So it is really cool to see how it goes. In fact, I covered this yesterday. I have a Model Y. I was thinking about taking it to a local track day and sort of playing this out for myself and seeing what we could find. But as this stuff improves, the ability to do HPDE and track day time attack style sessions really just goes up. It skyrockets. And I wouldn't be surprised to see more and more folks funnel in here. And let's be honest, the Model 3 Performance is classed with cars like the 911 GT3. What the frick are they going to classify the Plaid with? 128.2 is mighty fast, especially for a car that doesn't have any suspension modification, a car that only has wheel, tire, brakes, and aero. And obviously it's stripped with a cage for safety purposes, right? That's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Jack, I'm going to do a quick search to see if we can find it. How much battery was left after Pikes Peak run for Tesla Model S Plaid? I don't think... Yeah, they don't say, but I'll try to find that. Maybe we can cover that in a future episode. But super exciting either way to see this thing continue to get development, continue to just go all out. I'm excited to see what the next steps are for the folks over at Unplugged. They do a lot of really cool things, and they do them right. If you guys watch or look at their website, they release a lot of really cool products for most of the Tesla vehicles. And like I said, they're in the same frickin' parking lot as Tesla. And Stark, if you're a JDM guy, Unplugged Performance stems from Bulletproof. I don't know if you've heard of Bulletproof. Bulletproof is one of the highest connected JDM parts importers in the States. They work with Top Secret, they work with Amuse, they work with all of these companies, Voltex, etc. And the aero kit that they developed for the Model 3 actually leverages a specifically designed Voltex wing on the Model 3, which is really, really cool. It looks freaking awesome. Let me pull up a photo, show you. And they actually took their Model 3 around Scuba. Shout out to the Stark with the follow, my man. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. Welcome to the MoneyShift crew, my dude. Let me show you this this Model 3 that I'm talking about. Here it is right here. This thing has the full Ascension R kit from the folks at Unplugged. So you see side skirts, rear bumper, front bumper, but also that Voltex wing. Pretty sick, and it's at the Scuba circuit right there. Jack says maybe certain tracks could look into getting a couple superchargers in the pit. That way the cars don't even need to leave the track to charge. So Laguna has that. Willow Springs has them close by. Lime Rock near me actually has superchargers on site. So they're becoming more and more frequent. But yeah, that's definitely a good idea, Jack. I totally agree. But let's move on because we got a bunch of stuff to still get to today. Damn, looks sick. Yeah, man, that thing is rad for sure. Moving on to something a little slower. This is a Lincoln Aviator. Now, you guys might not know what this is, but I'll get you familiar. The Lincoln Aviator is the Ford Explorer for Lincoln, okay? So it's a mid-size SUV, rear-wheel drive first, which is important to note. In top spec, you can get a twin-turbo 3-liter V6 that produces 400 horsepower, 415 pound-feet of torque, with an available plug-in hybrid powertrain, which increases that to 494 horsepower and 630 pound-feet of torque, with the ability to travel 21 miles on electric. But what you're looking at here is a collaboration between Lincoln and Shinola. Shinola is a luxury brand famous for their watches, okay? And they collaborated to create a luxury version of the Lincoln Aviator. Now, this car draws inspiration from the Shinola Canfield watch and the Runwell bicycle, which shows off a lot of the characteristics of this thing. So if you start from the outside, it's a bluish white, a la Lexus Toyota, but that's actually inspired by Shinola's mother-of-pearl watch dials. Now, this thing also has copper accents, which is akin to the structure on the Runwell bike. And inside, this is where this car attempts to fuck, if you will. You know what I mean? It's where it attempts to make some noise. It's where it attempts to make some inroads into the luxury space. Adorning the seats, the steering wheel, and the dash of this car is Shinola's whiskey leather. There's cream suede inserts, woven metal mesh trim, and copper accents that also find their way into the interior. Now, what do you guys think? Is this luxury for you? Does this tick the box that Mercedes, BMW, and others fill? Or is this just corny? I kind of lean towards the corny side of things. I love the color scheme. Okay. I think leveraging copper accents is sweet instead of the traditional aluminum, or instead of, you know, black, piano black, gloss black, stuff like that. I think using copper is a great idea. But the leather itself, well, I'm sure it's supple. I bet you it's hella comfy. I don't know. It already looks kind of worn to me. I don't know. It just doesn't look right, right? Like, seeing this right here, it almost looks half-assed. And maybe this is just because of the nature of the leather that they were using to cover literally this entire vehicle. But looking at this front seat right here, I don't know. It just doesn't, to me, it just doesn't look right. Granted, obviously, I'm not someone who's making interiors. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. So that's the Shinola concept. This thing is fully going to be unveiled at Pebble Beach on August 12th, in addition to a host of other vehicles, some of which we will get to in this podcast. Now, we don't often cover museum announcements, but I wanted to touch on this because this is something that is pretty special. But before we do, what's Jack got for us? Jack says, I don't know, man, 600 torque in something that size probably isn't that slow. Seems a little corny. The design of the seats kind of looks slapped together. Dashboard looks very nice, though. I think I'm totally aligned with you, Jack. I think the plug-in hybrid powertrain in the Aviator is a good one. Reports on the review circuit seem to make people believe that it actually doesn't have the 600 torque. It doesn't just have that rush that you would expect with something with that high of a torque figure. But overall, the Aviator is well liked. But yeah, I do agree. The seats do kind of look slapped together. Okay, moving on to the Peterson Automotive Museum. If you guys haven't been here yet and you are automotive fans, this is a must. Peterson Automotive Museum is located in Los Angeles, conveniently close to where Tupac got shot, which is kind of sad news. But anyway, the Peterson Museum has announced a pole position exhibit. This is the Juan Gonzalez F1 collection on display. And this is probably going to be one of the only times you can see cars like this assembled in the same place for viewing. Now, Juan is a McLaren sponsor himself and the chairman of the Board of Missions Food, Juan Gonzalez. So this guy has an extensive connection with Formula One, and it's the reason why he's collected the cars he's collected. Now, the vehicles on display are pretty special. We're talking about camel livery 1987 Lotus 99T. We're talking about Fernando Alonso's 2018 MCL 33 McLaren, the orange one here. We're talking about a Ferrari F138 from 2013, Toro Rosso STR 12s. We're talking about 5 more McLarens from 2005 to 2011, including Mika Häkkinen's iconic McLaren, 90s Ferraris, 90s McLarens, even a 93 Williams Formula One car. This is probably one of the best collections of Formula One cars we've seen, and you have the chance to see it. If you guys are located in the Los Angeles area, go check it out. The Peterson Museum is freaking awesome. And if you're not, it's a good destination, guys. For couples, there's so much to do for both parties, whether it's the beach, whether it's food, whatever it is, and you can sneak in a little trip there. You know what I mean? Peterson Auto Museum. Awesome. Stark says you should add more tags on Twitch so you can reach a wider audience because this is quality content. I appreciate you, man. And any tips are definitely welcome. So I will definitely take you up on that and add some more tags. I appreciate you for that. Thank you for that, dude. Michael says this is awesome. Jack says that camel livery is sick. I do agree, man. These are actually some of my favorite F1 cars of all time. This West McLaren era, that's those silver cars. Those are the ones that got me into the sport. I was a massive Mika Hakkinen, Michael Schumacher guy. So to be able to see both of these cars in one spot is crazy. And then I'm a huge McLaren homer. Those of you that have watched me talk about Formula One know that I'm a big McLaren fan. So getting to see Fernando Alonso's MCL33 McLaren would be awesome, even though, you know what I mean, McLaren isn't necessarily at the top in that period. It would still be really cool to see that car. So definitely check this out if you guys are located in that area. Moving on to the next topic. Go Lando indeed, Michael. I'm with you, man. I'm with you 100%. It was a travesty to see his point streak get eradicated thanks to Valtteri Bottas. But anyway, moving on, we got to talk about SSC, and we're going to talk about them real quickly. These are the guys that came out with the Tuatara, a car that has been in development for the better part of a decade. This car's intention was to hit a top speed of 331 miles per hour, and earlier this year, they had claimed to do so. Now, when they claimed to do so, some YouTubers came out and actually proved them wrong. They showed specific elements, specific things in their video that proved that it was impossible for this car to achieve the speeds that it achieved, right? And they were right. The car actually didn't achieve that 331 top speed that they claimed. It didn't actually even achieve over 300. And SSC recently came out and confirmed this. They said, quote, "We have seen your questions for months now and understand your frustrations. If it hasn't been made clear up to this point, we would like to acknowledge officially that we did not reach the originally claimed speed of 331 miles per hour or even the 301 mile per hour in October of 2020. Now that is big for a few reasons. Number one, we knew that that 331 mile per hour claim was bullshit, right? The people that proved it made such a clear-cut case that showed that there was no way that that car hit the number it hit. But later that year, they came out and said that they hit a 301 mile per hour time, and they even invited the YouTubers. And now they're coming out and saying that not only did we not hit the originally claimed speed of 331, we didn't even hit the 301 mile per hour mark. In fact, they didn't even come close. Don't get me wrong, over 200 miles per hour is still an impressive feat for someone to hit. But the difference between 220, 230, and 300 is huge. And yeah, I agree, Stark. This thing is sexy as hell. The SSC Tuatara is one of the better looking cars in the segment. And the fact that it's from the US makes me want this thing to succeed like you wouldn't believe. But to lie not once, but twice? That's tough. Jack says, this is so wild to me. Why would they lie about this in the first place? Obviously, people were going to do the math. Exactly. When you're making claims like this, right? This isn't them saying, hey, we hit 250. Look at us. We hit 250. Which, by the way, still freaking impressive. Okay. This isn't them saying that. They were saying they hit 331 miles per hour. So it obviously was going to be fact-checked. Fact-checked it was, and it was debunked. But then to do it again when the car hit 301 miles per hour and not even... it's bad news. Bad news, Bears. Not looking forward to seeing where this car goes, and it sucks because it, like Stark said, man, this thing is sexy. Like, it's a good-looking thing. And it's impressive what they're doing. They're building this thing all themselves, right? This isn't using like an LS motor that's hopped up. That's all SSC. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the next wave is for the brand. But for now, things aren't looking so hot. What you guys are looking at on screen here, though, is Aston Martin teasing something that they're also going to be unveiling on August 12th. This is going to be the Valkyrie Roadster. Now, it's going to look identical to the coupe, but it's obviously going to have the ability to lose its roof. Now, as a reminder, the Aston Martin Valkyrie is going to be one of the most batshit vehicles on the road, and it is coming out in Q4 of this year. So we should start seeing these things soon. And as a reminder, what's powering this thing is freaking insane. We're talking about a naturally aspirated V12 a 6.5-liter boy. That guy alone makes 1,000 horsepower and 546 pound-feet of torque, but that's not enough. In addition to that V12, this thing has electric power, which adds another 160 horsepower and 207 pound-feet of torque, which gives this a combined total of 1,160 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque. This thing can do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, and it sounds good while doing it. So I'm excited to see what comes of this. Pebble promises to have some pretty amazing stuff, and this is no different. So let's see what happens. I'm definitely looking forward to it. August 12th is going to be awesome because not only is this being unveiled on August 12th, but this is as well. What you guys are looking at are photos and teasers of the Acura NSX Type S. Now, this is the swan song for the NSX of this generation. It is unclear whether it is going to come back. It is unclear whether we'll see it again. If you had to ask me, if I had to bet today, right now, what the next iteration of the NSX looks like, I'll tell you. It's an all-electric sports car. And you hate it. You might hate it. You might not like it. But the fact of the matter is, what the Acura NSX has stood for since the early 90s, okay? New sports car experimental. That's what NSX stands for. And pushing the boundaries of what these cars can be able to do is what the NSX should do. Developing new technologies in this segment, things that weren't seen before, is what the NSX should do. And that's what this one did. Now, people didn't like it, okay? But it had a twin-turbo V6, and it leveraged electric motors in the front. Technology that was only isolated to cars like the Porsche 918 at the time. And while it didn't start off right, as they started to hone it in, the car really went into its own. And the NSX now is actually heralded as one of the better cars in this class, the class of the R8, the class of the Huracan, etc., etc. Now, this Type S model will be the final version of this generation NSX. And it's going to have some changes. Now, we don't know specifically what those changes are, but we can make some assumptions, and I'm going to do that, okay? This is likely going to have more aggressive suspension. This is likely going to have a different wheel tire, larger brakes, louder exhaust, different aero. A sportier version of the car. Jack says, I'm going to agree with what Dan said. I bet this thing is going to be disappointing, just like the regular NSX. See, I disagree with Jack and Dan on this. I actually don't think this NSX is disappointing. Now, the reason why this NSX is disappointing to those that own the first generation of NSX is because it isn't that. The first generation of NSX was a lightweight, naturally aspirated car that focused on that, right? It developed things like aluminum, extensive use of aluminum, things that before that date weren't used, right? It was able to provide packaging in such a way that you could daily drive the car with ease and have reliability while doing it. But the car was experimental in a variety of ways because it was created in an instance where a lot of the things that it did weren't possible and weren't seen before in that price bracket. Now, what the new NSX did is the same thing. It's a new sports car experimental. Is it a naturally aspirated, low-weight car? No. But a naturally aspirated car that is low weight isn't experimental. Not at all. What is utilizing electric power in a price bracket that's never seen that before. You're talking about a car that's priced with an R8, that's cheaper than a Huracan, that's cheaper than a 458, that's priced alongside some 911s, that leverages not only a twin-turbo V6, but 2 electric motors in the front to reduce the lag of the turbos, giving you an incredible driving experience, something that we haven't seen in that price bracket. Now, the car might be disappointing to faithful that are looking for something like a first-generation NSX reincarnated, but to those that are looking to the NSX as an ethos of an experimental vehicle, it wasn't disappointing at all, not in the slightest. Now, when it was unveiled, there were definitely some bugs and some things that they had to work out, right? But in its facelifted form, the car bangs. Watch any review of the NSX in its facelifted form, and what everyone says is, holy shit, this car is good. And it is vastly improved from when it first launched. But remember what the ethos of the NSX is. Remember that. And if you were expecting this car to be like the first generation NSX, you were going to be disappointed. And Porsche already makes that car. Go buy a Cayman. Go buy a Lotus Emira. They make that car. They got it for you. But if you're expecting a car to embody the experimental ethos, that is what this NSX did. That is what it does. That is what it continues to do. So to me, it wasn't disappointing. Now, more power, different wheel tire, larger brakes, louder exhaust, different aero. It's going to be disappointing to you if this car is already a disappointment to you. But to those that like it, 600 plus horsepower, aggressive wheel tire, raspier exhaust, that's going to be sick. That's going to be sick. Now, they're going to be making 350 of these things in total, 300 of which are going to be sold in the United States. In fact, the 2022 NSX, each model will be a Type S. Jack says, unfortunately, it'll never have the same clout as its competitors. Even if this thing slaps, people are still going to go out and buy an R8 so they get looks at Cars and Coffee. I feel that 100%. But here on MoneyShift, we don't F with clout cars, man. We don't do that. We showcase things that are great. That's why we put a lot of emphasis on cars like this. That's why we talk a lot about the Korean cars, right? The new Hyundais, things like that. Because at the end of the day, when you parse back the clout, there's a lot of good cars there that people just don't see. Shout out to Mark Van Booski with the like and the share. I appreciate you, Mark. Welcome, my dude. Hope break is going well. Hope work is going awesome. You see what I mean? Like, we try to focus here on, like, no clout stuff, but I definitely agree with you that because of clout, this thing goes unnoticed. For sure. For sure. Moving on, we got to talk about what I think is probably the funniest announcement for today. Now, a lot of Volkswagen Audi Auto Group people might be pissed at me for this, but I'm going to be honest, I don't really care. The Audi RS3 has set a record in the compact class. Or they're claiming they've set a record in the compact class. Their time around the Nürburgring was 7 minutes, 40.748 seconds. Now, that is about 4 seconds faster than the previous record time. Now, the previous record time was 7 minutes, 45 seconds, okay? But before we talk about what the previous record was, let's level set and understand what the RS3 is, okay? The RS3, compact sedan from Audi. In European form has 394 horsepower. In US form has 401. Both have 369 pound-feet of torque. This thing has an inline 5 turbo with all-wheel drive that now has torque vectoring. In addition to that, this car was running Pirelli P0 Trofeo Rs with different seats and a roll cage, as most people do that do Nürburgring times. But the reason why I think this is hilarious, the reason why this is laughable, the reason why I scoff at Audi trying to claim a compact record is because the car they were taking it from was the Renault Megane RS Trophy R. And now I know I don't expect those of you in the States to know what the Renault Megane RS Trophy R was, but I'm going to learn you something, okay? Picture the Renault Megane RS Trophy as a Volkswagen Golf. The car that previously held this record had a 1.8-liter turbo engine that made 296 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque through the front wheels, okay? So if we compare and contrast the two cars, okay, we look at the RS3 that had 100 horsepower more, the RS3 that had 100 torque more, the RS3 that's all-wheel drive, not front-wheel drive, the RS3 that had almost an additional liter of engine. So I don't know if you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, but well, no shit, this car broke the record. In fact, I'm more impressed with the fact that the Renault Megane RS Trophy R is able to come within 4 seconds of the car that has over 100 horsepower, of the car that has all-wheel drive, of the car that had Pirelli P0 Trofeo Rs. All this record does is make the Renault more impressive to me. But this is car news, so we got to bring it up. And I know we got some Audi heads in the chat. I know we got some Audi heads in the MoneyShift audience. So I apologize for making fun of you. I think this car is kick-ass. I think it is terrific. But to claim the compact class record when that was previously reserved for hot hatches and front-wheel drive things is kind of funny. Shout out to Ben with the like. I appreciate you, Ben. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. All right, now the last bit of news that we're going to be talking about before we do a high-level review is a bike. And the reason why I'm showing you guys a motorcycle is for a couple things. Jack says, I mean, it's still in the same class as the Renault, so it's still a record. I feel that, in that they're both compact cars. But if you're trying to come to me and say, like you're being all jazzed and happy and impressed that you were able to shave a couple seconds off a car that's front-wheel drive, probably weighs a little less, but has a lot less horsepower, I don't know if it's that impressive. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those, well, duh. You know? It's definitely still a record, but I don't know. I don't know. So the reason why I'm showing you guys a motorcycle is, I'm going to be honest with you guys, after coming back from Greece, I got motorcycle fever. I desperately want one. I'm going to go through all the leaps and bounds to get one. But when I saw this news, I thought this was really, really interesting. BMW has announced their new foray into cruisers. And while they started making this style bike with the R18 last year, this is the first time they're making an R18b, which stands for bagger. BMW is making frickin' baggers, and this thing looks dynamite. Look at that paint job. This thing looks sick. The R18b is powered by a 1.8 liter flat twin boxer engine, makes 91 horsepower, 116 pound-feet of torque, with 111 of that torque available at 2,000 RPM. Now, the R18B is called the B because it's a bagger, which means it has big fairings. It means it's got 3 lights available. Right? You see it on the Galaxy one, or some of the other ones, whatever. And a big-ass windshield. Joe says, yo, motorcycles on MoneyShift. Hell yeah. Yeah, you can see them right here. They have 3 lights or 1, and then the base ones are in the bottom right here. Those were the ones that were unveiled last year. Jack says, it's almost like I'm looking at a Harley that someone put a BMW badge on. Yeah, I would kill to see how this feels from a driving dynamic experience versus a Harley. Right? Because we're talking about BMW here. We're not only talking about BMW, we're talking about BMW's motorcycle division, which is incredible. Right? They make things like the GS, one of the best adventure bikes of all time, a bike that I'm so lasered in on to purchase, it blows my mind. But in addition to that 1.8 liter flat twin boxer, the big fairings, the lights, the windshield, etc., this thing also has a 10.25 HD screen. You guys saw that thing? That was huge. That's bigger than most cars. This Galaxy paint job is nutso, by the way. It's so sick. The BMW R18b also features dynamic cruise control, which maintains speed going downhill, and available adaptive cruise control, which uses radar to maintain distance, much like a car. Now, this BMW also has 3 drive modes, 2 of which are normal, 1 of which could not be more cringe, but I live for it. Number 1, road mode. Makes sense. Driving on the road. Number 2, rain mode. Makes sense. You're driving in the rain. Number 3, rock mode. That's ROCK, folks. Rock mode. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Rock mode? Is that off-road? Are you going to be taking this thing where no bagger has gone before? No. Rock mode means rock mode. Like, I want to rock. That's what rock mode means. Quote, it's for rock and roll. It's the bike sport mode. Now, Joe, you might know more about bikes than I do. Jack, you might know more about bikes than I do. But is this on anything else? Like, does Harley call their sport mode roll or something like that? Because I read this and I actually laughed out loud. But look how big that frickin' screen is. 10.25 inches. Are you kidding me? Sick. So sick. Obviously, this thing has heated seats. Obviously, this thing has heated grips. Obviously, this thing has everything. It's a BMW, for Christ's sake. If you opt for the bigger 6.3 gallon fuel tank, you get this storage slot, which actually is wireless charging for your phone as well. This is just a German engineered Harley. Joe says, no, Harley doesn't do modes. That makes sense. So I'm going to be really interested and intrigued with how this compares to other bikes in the segment, specifically Harleys. But to me, it looks the part. To me, it's got the juice. And to me, it's got the luxury. But I do understand that I'm not a classic bagger Harley type biker, right? I'm a different breed of person, right? And again, this stems from the fact that, guys, I desperately want a motorcycle. Like, desperately. But I'm more into the adventure bike segment, so I'm not going to be spending $20K on a bike. But the Harley Pan America, their like adventure bike that looks like Dread or RoboCop on wheels, is really interesting. But the fact that you can get old BMW GSs and KTMs for like under $6K that's where the money's at. All right. But with that, guys, let's do a quick recap on today's automotive news. Jack says, no, I didn't even think Harleys had multiple modes. Yeah, you're probably right. They don't. I bet you only the Pan America has them. Now, the first bit of news that we touched on, Joe says, this looks more like an Indian chieftain. Yeah, I vibe with that. I agree. First bit of news that we talked about today was the Land Cruiser GR Sport model is here. Now, this is a Land Cruiser with a specific body kit, 18-inch wheels, new rear bumper, etc., etc. But the interesting thing about the Land Cruiser is that it has the electronic kinetic dynamic suspension system, which not only automatically adjusts, but it independently adjusts front and rear stabilizers under certain conditions to maintain a contact patch on the road, and it is insane. It works tremendously well. The second bit of news that we talked about is the Unplugged Performance Model S Plaid has set a record for the electric vehicle all-round Laguna Seca with a time of 128.2. This is just 0.6 of a second slower than a McLaren Senna and 0.1 of a second faster than a Porsche GT2 RS. Randy Post was behind the wheel, and they are not done yet. They are just getting started. Moving on, Lincoln has paired up with Shinola to make a luxury version of the Aviator. Now, this is, as it stands, a concept, but depending on how it is received, it could receive elements in their production model. Ditching the chrome trim for copper trim inspired by a Runwell bicycle and introducing Shinola whiskey leather in the interior, this thing tries to create a more premium experience to rival the likes of the Cadillac Escalade and the premium German competitors. Now, the next bit of news comes by way of the Peterson Auto Museum. The pole position Juan Gonzalez F1 collection is on display. You have the ability to see cars like the 80s Lotus 99T, the camel livery car. You have the ability to see Fernando Alonso's MCL 33 McLaren, Mika Hakkinen's McLaren, Michael Schumacher's Formula One Ferrari, and more. Plenty of tremendous cars on display. And not only that, guys, the Peterson Museum just has amazing cars on display in general, not just these Formula One vehicles. This is just a reason to go head out there if you haven't already. Jack says, if you got a KTM, you better have $1 billion set aside for maintenance. That's good intel, dude. I did not know that. I'll definitely have to look more into it. I'm just super drawn to the KTM adventure bikes, and they're available here in the States. In fact, there's one for sale right now, the 990 Adventure, for a good price. Joe says KTM SMC R690 is the one finally available in the States as of last year. Yeah, the midweight bikes are making a big comeback, the 600cc style bikes, and that's because they're able to extract more power out of that 600cc. If you compare a 600cc bike today to a 1000cc GS in like the 90s, 2000s, they have the same level of power. So they're making a big resurgence, which is why actually Aprilia released a Touareg, a new 690 something cc bike, literally just yesterday. Joe says, to be honest, I love the Aviator, love the roofline. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a beautiful looking thing. Joe says, I'm checking out the Simeon Museum next weekend in PA. You will definitely have to report back. I will definitely travel for an automotive museum. There is no doubt. The next bit of news that we had to talk about comes by way of Shelby Supercars SSC, the makers of the Tuatara, came out and confirmed the fact that not only did they not hit the original claim speed of 331 miles per hour, but they didn't even hit the 301 miles per hour that was claimed to have been hit in October of 2020. They're a bunch of liars. It is what it is. Moving on, Aston Martin previewed their Valkyrie Roadster, which they will be unveiling at Pebble Beach on August 12. It will look identical to the coupe, but lose the roof, which means you're going to have an open air experience with an 1100 horsepower naturally aspirated 6.5 liter V12. Jack says, is the Tuatara a pushrod motor or does it have overhead cams? That is a good question, and I do have the answer. Hold on just a sec. Let me whip it up. Where the heck? It's a 5.9 liter twin turbo. Is it overhead cam or is it push rod? Da 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 da. .9 liter twin turbo V8 with a flat plane crank shaft, 8,800 horsepower redline, flat plane crank. That's all I got for you. Connecting rods. Da, 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 da. No, I think it's overhead cam, dude. I think it's overhead cam. I think it's overhead cam. Pretty cool. Jack continues to say, does the Valkyrie originally have gull wing doors? Good question. It does. It does have gull wing doors. It's always had gull wing doors. So this thing will give you an open air experience with a naturally aspirated 6.5 liter V12. So by proxy, it is actually perfect. Moving on, we talked about Acura will also be unveiling the NSX Type S on August 12. This will be the send-off to the NSX, and it will have an upgraded version of the twin-turbo V6 hybrid that in stock form makes 573 horsepower, so expect well over that 600 horsepower mark. This car will likely have more aggressive suspension, different wheel tire, larger brakes, different aero, and it's going to be the last year of Acura sold. And they're going to be making 350 of them. 300 are for the US, 50 are for the rest of world. Now, if we look at Acura's sale numbers in general for the NSX, last year was a tough year, as it was for everyone. They sold 128 models. But the year before that, they actually sold 238. So to sell 300 of a special edition is probably not outside the realm of possibility. Moving on to the Audi RS3, claiming the compact class, which it does in fact deserve, but it is kind of laughable. The 400 horsepower inline-5 turbo all-wheel drive machine bested the Renault Megane RS Trophy, which is a 1.8 liter turbo front-wheel drive hatchback, making 296 horsepower. With a time of 7 minutes and 40 seconds around the ring, that is a pretty scorching time. Now, if we look at the overall Nürburgring lap record, you're looking at 6 minutes and 43 seconds with the GT2 RS, so almost a minute faster than the RS3. But cars that are relatively similar timed, the RS Trophy, like we said before, from Renault, the Civic Type R did a 7 minute 43 second time. The 488 Pista did a 7 minute time. So just give you guys some perspectives with a couple of times there. Jack says, this being the final iteration of the NSX, what will replace it? I wonder what market they'll try to tackle next. Jack, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be an electric car. 100% it's going to be an electric car of some sort. Probably leveraging 4 electric motors, but it's definitely going to be an electric car, without a doubt, which is going to piss off a lot of NSX people. But remember, it's new sports car experimental, so it's probably going to be an electric version of something. Now, moving on to the last vehicle we talked about the Bmw R18b. This is a bagger featuring a 1.8 liter flat twin boxer with 91 horsepower and 116 pound-feet of torque. This bike, big fairings, 3 lights available, huge windshield, massive 10.25 HD screen, dynamic cruise control, etc., etc. This thing has all the intangibles for success. Jack says, even heavier. Jack, there are definitely lightweight electric vehicles, but studies have actually shown that lightweight doesn't necessarily benefit EVs in terms of the total energy and emissions. That said, I'm assuming it's going to have ludicrous performance. That said, I'm assuming it's going to be crazy fast. I'm not a big of a fan of just cars that are pursuing nutso numbers, right? In the sense that it's looking for like crazy 0 to 60 times or anything like that. I'm more for cars pursuing feel, which is why I'm a big fan of cars like the Alpine A110S and the Lotus Emira, things like that. But I'm not going to write it off because we haven't even seen it. We haven't even heard about it, but we'll see. You know what I mean? We'll see. But anyway, guys, that is your hour of Money Shift News. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Joe, Jack, Mark, Stark on Twitch. Thank you, everybody, for that. I appreciate you all. Money Shift is a daily automotive news show. We go live around 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we go till the news ends. Monday through Friday, we rarely stream on weekends. We might introduce some gaming streams at night where we just hang out, shoot the shit, talk about cars. But every morning, we're going to be doing automotive streams for all your daily news. Now, I am Thanasi on behalf of Money Shift, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow